Knon 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more...
Welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm David Taffet, and I'm here in the studio with Lerone Landis. Patti has the week off. Our guest today is Rizi Xavier Timane. He is a Nigerian-born transgender minister and certified grief recovery specialist residing in Los Angeles. He grew up in an extremely religious Christian home and was subjected to multiple exorcisms and other reparative attempts by his family and church to pray the gay away. Rizi, are you there? Yeah, Rizi, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
There you are. Yes,
welcome.
Now we can hear you. Welcome.
Oh, good. Thank you.
And we're going to talk about a number of different issues. We're all excited about what happened in Utah this week. We're excited about New Mexico this week. But let's talk a little bit about, and we'll get to those during the hour, and I want you to weigh in on what your opinion on those things are. But tell us a little bit about your story. You were born in Nigeria.
Yes. I was born in Nigeria, which is in West Africa. Yeah. To a very, very Christian fundamentalist family who believed that homosexuality was a sin, and any kind of gender nonconformity would also be a sin. So in that background, identifying as a lesbian initially was not well received, and my mother in particular felt the need to save me from hell, which was, according to her religious belief. And so she would have many exorcism attempts done. Some of them she conducted herself, but sometimes she would bring people, other pastors and church leaders to help her to try to cast out the demons of homosexuality from me. It was a very traumatic, childhood growing up feeling like you were demon-possessed or something was wrong with you.
Yeah. One thing that I find really interesting, I came out at an age that I think was young, actually. I was about 19. Lerone, you were how old?
About 19, 20. So it's a process.
Right. But I grew up in a very liberal area. You were in Nigeria, and you came out at what age?
Well, the first time I realized something was different, I was only 8 years old.
8 years old?
And,
okay.
Yes, and I remember telling my dad that I thought I was a boy. That was the best way I could express myself at the time. He said it was a phase. Children go through this phase where they're not sure about their gender, and I would grow out of it. But, eventually at age 12 through to 14, those same sex attractions continued, and I began to identify as a lesbian. So between 12 to 14, I already was, sure that I was a lesbian. And then I came out fully, probably 16, which was when the big fallout occurred with my family.
And you came out as transgender at 16?
No, at that time I came out as a lesbian.
Oh, as lesbian, okay.
As a lesbian, because there was no way. I had spent probably between the age of 8 through to 12, I had spent pretty much every night praying to God to help me wake up as a boy, because I was completely convinced that I was male and that there had been a mistake somewhere. But the more I spoke with, people around me, the more they said, there is no such thing as, a man stuck in a woman's body or vice versa. So if you have same-sex attractions, then that would mean that you were lesbian. And so with no other knowledge or recourse to me, I came out as a lesbian.
You know, in this country, we hear, about the struggle for LGBT rights. And of course, we now hear more of the fight globally, but it's usually in terms of just gays and lesbians. We don't really hear that much about other countries' transgender fight. But here's the thing. Over here, when you're transgender, even though it's still a fight, you still have somewhat of a community, that's out there that you can go and have support you. Was there any other transgender people that you knew in Nigeria?
No, not at all. At that time, I was pretty much, isolated in the way I felt. And there were other lesbian and gay people, that were closeted, but we could speak in secret. We could speak about our feelings. But even they did not relate to the transgender situation that I was facing. So it's a very rare occurrence back home to find another transgender person. But I know if I was there, many others are there. And it must just be the awkwardness and the unfriendliness of the environment that is keeping them closeted.
Well, even here, it's surprising most people in the gay and lesbian community how many transgender people are out there, because it's only really within the last 10, 15 years that being transgender has become a viable option.
Exactly.
When did you actually come out as transgender then?
This was just in 2011.
Oh, you just recently came out as transgender.
Yes.
And you were already living here in the United States then?
Yes, and I was already here.
Okay.
Yes.
And for anybody who doesn't even understand, well, why wouldn't the gay and lesbian community understand what you're going through? It's because you're really going through something different. How did it feel coming out as lesbian when you knew that's sort of what it is, but not really?
It was very conflicting. It added to my overall confusion. I just was a very confused person, finding nowhere to actually express my gender identity openly and correctly.
Right.
So I believe that happens to a lot of trans people too. There's this, still veil over the issue and not so much openness surrounding it. And it really does leave you feeling, confused and stuck. Because even though I came out as a lesbian, it never completely felt like my correct identity. I still had, self-doubts and issues and problems from it, which just led to a lot of internal turmoil. At one point, I did attempt to take my own life, and that was part of it, just not being able to fit in the heterosexual world or in the lesbian world completely, knowing fully well I was transgender and it was different, and not being able to air that out openly.
Right. And tell me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Rizi Xavier Timane?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And the book is An Unspoken Compromise. It is published by, who's it published by?
Hawkfish Publishing.
There it is. And is it available yet? I got it.
Oh, yes.
Okay, it is available. I wasn't sure if I had gotten an early copy.
Yes.
But it's An Unspoken Compromise. Very interesting book.
Well, I'm going to assume, but let me ask, are all your family still back in Nigeria?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and have you come out to them as transgender since you just recently did 2 years ago?
Yes, I did, yes.
Okay, what has been the response to that compared to when you came out as a lesbian?
Well, I expected it to be rough, and in many ways it was. I came out by a FedEx letter to my parents because I was too troubled to even speak to them by phone about it. So I wrote it, and I believe that it makes it easier when we write things down because we can think of what we want to say. And I felt it would be easier for them too because they could read it and then read it again and have some time with it. So I wrote a long letter explaining everything to them, and as expected, my mom, she was very troubled, and she replied me through a very long text, which was like a prayer of exorcism again, that she sent. It was like, may God, deliver you from the lies of Satan that are deceiving you and cheating you. It was really long. It was very painful, but it wasn't unexpected, based on how she reacted when I came out as a lesbian. My dad did what he usually does, which is stay silent. And then I didn't hear from my mom for probably maybe 8 to 9 months. She just was not replying any more emails or texts or anything at all. So I did eventually stop, texting her and just wanted to give her some time to sit with it. My brother has always been very homophobic. We had a bad relationship as soon as I came out, years ago. And he also did not reply. I've still not heard from him till this date, which is not a surprise. But
very sad.
But very sad indeed. But things did change. Eventually, my mom did call. Okay. She did not accept it. We kind of continued living in our unspoken compromise from that time until my dad was flown to London in August. Was it August or September this year? So all this continued for a while till August or September this year, when my dad was flown to London for an emergency surgery. He had colon cancer, and it was at stage 4 or something. It was really huge. The cancer had erupted in his intestines. They thought he wasn't going to make it. And I flew out there to be by his side and, be with him. And that was the first time they had seen me since I started hormones and all the surgeries. And so it was very awkward. But the issue at hand was bigger than my transition or how they felt about it. Right. It was a life and death issue. And that was how, we started to talk about the subject once he was recovering and started chemotherapy. I actually didn't bring it up. He brought it up one day and just told me he needed me to sit beside him so he could talk to me. And I thought, oh, here we go. What's going to happen? And he just said, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I want to apologize to you for all the years of abuse that we've put you through, because I see now that you are just a person, a good child, who loves me enough to have come out here and take care of me this way. To fly halfway around the world. Yeah. He said, I see it now, because they've been taught these things. His parents, some of them, his parents were preachers. My mom's parents were preachers, and they have gone through the same, upbringing. And it was hammered into their head that so many things are wrong, including homosexuality or being transgender. And they just believed these things and allowed them to dictate their lives. But as in all things, when you face a human being and you're in a human situation, that is when our humanity shines through. And it may make you question your doctrines. It may make you question your theology. And I think that's what happened to my parents. Yeah. I was... Oh, go ahead, David.
No, I was just going to say that really touches me. It's a nice ending. Not that your story has ended, but that's a nice. It's good that your father did that.
Do you know what I was going to say was it shows that there really is a reason to always do the right thing, and you were doing the right thing. Yes. Your father was sick. You went to help take care of him. It didn't matter how he had treated you in the past. You just did the right thing, and that's where your acceptance and this new relationship, how it began.
Exactly. Yeah. And so now they're coming in February to visit, and it's very different now.
Oh, good. That's great.
Good.
You mentioned hormone treatment, and we know that's part of the process. Yeah. Regardless if it's man transitioning to a woman or vice versa. I don't know what the laws are. We hear so many different things about what laws are concerning LGBT people in the continent of Africa, the various countries.
The infamous one is Uganda.
But the infamous one, is Uganda. But if being gay is illegal in Nigeria, and I don't know if it is, you can clear that up for us. I would assume that there's no option to even go get treatment. There
definitely isn't. Yes, it is illegal. It always was illegal but it wasn't enforced until late 2011. Some new senators started this, the same thing that happened in Uganda. Certain evangelicals went there to spread the gospel of hatred, and the anti-homosexuality bill was passed. Those same people came to Nigeria, Kenya, and other places and spread it. So it came back in full force very recently and is now being enforced. Sadly, people are now being imprisoned, and, murder rates and hate crimes against LGBT people are getting higher with this new evangelical, sponsored bill.
And you're talking about, is it 3 or 4 very specific evangelical American right-wing Christians
they are,
who have gone to these countries, stirred up trouble. Here's what my question has been, and I know you don't have the answer. Why hasn't the State Department pulled their passports?
Exactly.
They're causing trouble for these countries, for people in these countries. It's not American policy. I don't understand why we're even allowing these people to do this, because we're having to go in and clean up their mess, basically.
Exactly.
It's terrible what they're
doing.
Really
sad. It's really sad.
It is. We're going to need to take a break. You stick with us, because we have the whole hour. We're talking to Rizi Xavier Timane. He's transgender, originally from Nigeria. His new book is An Unspoken Compromise. I'm Dave Taffet. I'm here in the studio with Lerone Landis. We'll be back with more Lambda Weekly right after this.
Don't be a Scrooge. Give the blues to the music lover on your list. KNON has the perfect CD or LP for you. Texas Blues Radio Volume 5. Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 features acoustic blues, instrumental blues, party songs, somebody done somebody wrong songs, baby got a good thing songs, six-pack and devil's back songs, gumbo, jive, T-bone, and hip-shaking songs from a fine selection of great Texas blues artists. So do right by the blues and give some Texas blues this year. Texas Blues Radio Volume 5 CD is available at knon.org. Forever Young Records in Grand Prairie, and in Dallas at Bill's Records. Vinyl copies are at Forever Young Records for that vinyl fan on your list. Downloads are available at cdbaby.com. All proceeds are a gift to KNON.
The Dallas Volunteer Attorney Program, a joint initiative of the Dallas Bar Association and Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. It is an organization dedicated to increasing and enhancing pro bono legal services to the poor in Dallas through the recruitment, training, and support of volunteer attorneys. DVAP offers numerous legal clinics for Dallas County residents. For more information, dallasbar.org/DVAP.
This is William. I download Lambda Weekly podcast from lambdaweekly.com.
And welcome back to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with
This is Jake
Landis.
Winters from Leicester, England, and I listen to Lambda Weekly.
Yep. He had that on continuous. Us making technical errors here on KNON, it's what we're known for.
No problem.
Rizi Xavier Timane is an author of a new memoir. It's called An Unspoken Compromise. It is published by, I had my finger in there and I pulled my finger out. It is published by Hawkfish Publishing. And we're talking a little bit about his story. Born in Nigeria, came to this country, came out as lesbian at the age of 8, but in this country actually transitioned from female to male. How long did your transition take once you decided that you were transgender?
Oh, I mean, I moved pretty quickly once I had decided. I started my testosterone treatments probably 2011, late 2011. And then by January of last year, I had the first surgery, which was the top surgery, the bilateral mastectomy, to remove the female breasts. And immediately felt a million times better, wasn't as having as much dysphoria as before. And then by October last year, I began bottom surgeries which are the phalloplasty to change the genitals from female to male, penile construction. I started that as a multi-stage surgery because there are different ways you can go about it, but some of the ways are more, dangerous, more risky, carry higher risks. So I chose the least risky method, which unfortunately required multiple stages. So in October, I started going through those stages, and about 7 or 8 surgeries later, I was almost done. So I had one more stage just not last month, we're in December now, October. I had one more stage in October, which was to add a urethra into the penile construction. And then I have one more stage in March next year, and that will be the end. That is to place an erectile device into the penis to allow for spontaneous sexual intercourse.
Right.
So it's a long process, but it will be over in March next year.
And that's kind of amazing. That you're hearing us, aren't you, Rizi?
Oh yes,
you're
I am,
hearing
yes.
us. Are the buttons not going? Are the dials are not going?
It must have went out.
Okay. Rizi, hold on with us.
All right, Rizi.
Okay.
There we are.
Okay, can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
Yes,
there we
I can.
are.
Yes.
Are the dials going?
All right.
Okay.
Rizi, I just wanted to ask, throughout your all, your troubles and, the difficulty through your process, there has been, a glimmer of happiness. Looks like you found that. You got married. Can you tell us about that?
Oh yes, Christina, the brightest star in the universe, I would say. She's beautiful inside and out, and we started dating more than 6 years ago as a same-sex couple, and she's bisexual. She is American, but her family are Asian Americans, like originally from Cambodia. So she came from a different Buddhist background that was very open, very different from anything I had ever seen. Her mom had always been very accepting of her bisexuality, and when I came into her life, I just latched onto her mom because she was also so accepting of me, something I had never seen before. So it just was awesome, and when I decided that I had to transition, I was very worried about what Christina would say or feel, because we had been in this same-sex relationship for all this time. But she was so open and so understanding and so accepting. And she's been a source of pure joy and comfort in my life. She went through every surgery with me as well. She was always right there by my side when I woke up from the anesthesia. She took care of me as I recovered from some of these, more extreme stages of the surgeries. And she's just always been a source of joy. I'm very blessed to have her. I wish everyone could have someone by their side.
That's wonderful because, from some of the stories we hear, that one of the things that transgender people go through is, one, they might be in a same-sex relationship already, and when they decide to start transitioning, their partner may not hang in there with them because that's not the person that they met.
Exactly.
Or the other scenario we've heard is that you meet someone, you start going out, and when you reveal to them that you're not biologically a male or female, whatever the case might be, then that also can ruin the relationship. So that is wonderful that she has been there with you from the beginning and is hung in there with you and y'all are still together. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm very lucky on that front. I've heard exactly the same stories as yourself, too.
Yeah, now, where do you all get married?
Oh, we got married in Maui on the beach.
Oh, nice.
In Hawaii, yes, it was very beautiful. At the time, only her family were there. All of her family were there, her immediate family. My parents I did not invite at that time because my mom had made it very clear years ago when same-sex marriage was legal in California. I kind of mentioned to her that, we might get married at some point, and she was like, definitely don't invite us because God will be very unhappy.
I can relate to that.
Yes.
Lerone had a very similar experience with his family when he got married.
I see.
I got married also and did not invite my
well,
father.
there you go.
Yeah,
so they were not invited. Yeah. My cousins were invited, but they had a lot of problems getting visas from Nigeria. Yeah. And then my best friend did eventually come, and one of my cousins came for the court wedding. Because by that time, my legal documents were all male. So we had a court wedding.
Now you live in California, right?
Yes.
So in California, it's much easier to change your documents than it is here in Texas. And in fact, we had a guest on a few weeks ago, and she was explaining how in California, because that's where she was born, her birth certificate is even changed. California treats it as if they're correcting a mistake, and your birth certificate is reissued as your transgender sex.
Oh, yes.
Right. Whereas in Texas, they'll issue a document, but they don't change the birth certificate.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they'll change your driver's license, your passport, but that's about it.
Well, passport's federal. And once you get your federal passport changed, then you can get your state documents changed, but not your birth certificate. They don't reissue that birth certificate.
Oh, I see. That's unfortunate.
Which is bad. Yeah. So you didn't have to wait for California to become a same-sex marriage state again, or wait for Hawaii, which just has had same-sex marriage just this month.
Oh, yeah.
You were able to just have a wedding under the old laws. I was going to say a regular wedding, but a gay wedding's a wedding too. It's just a regular wedding. But you were able to marry just under the laws because you were now, under California law, a man.
Yes, I was, yes.
I wanted to talk a little bit about reparative therapy. We hear so much about that in the States, and how that's, for Christian fundamentalists think that it will actually work. We see things slowly changing, and some states are actually banning it. New Jersey banned it, recently banned it, and California has banned it. In Nigeria, aside from being arrested for being gay, is that one of the main courses of trying to deal with it when someone comes out? It's reparative therapy?
Oh yes, it's very huge in Nigeria. It's the main way to attempt to save children, or whoever it is in your family that comes out from the demons of homosexuality. And so you go through all these exorcisms at church, and then you might be referred to a program, where people claim to now be ex-gays due to this program. I was, in fact, recommended by my mom to go to a prophetess who specializes in healing homosexuals. Of course, I did not go. It was going to require 2 weeks of being there with her, fighting these demons of homosexuality. And I mean, with all due respect to everybody's religious beliefs, there is no way to pray the gay away, because God created us all the way that we are. So it's very natural. If we look at history, if we look at animals, if we look at nature, there is homosexuality and transgenderism, including the transgendered hawkfish and other animal species. And so there's no need to, attempt to call people demon-possessed or try to force them to change. It has never worked. Many people who said they were ex-gay are still closeted homosexuals right now, or came out to recant those statements. It's very dangerous, very harmful, and it really should be stopped all over the world.
Since you've moved to the States, have you been contacted by any Nigerians, LGBT Nigerians, asking for help or guidance on maybe how to deal with their situation?
Oh, yes. That was one of the reasons I actually founded Rizi Timane Ministry as an online ministry where I could help people through phone, Skype, email, and most of the emails that came initially were coming from Nigeria, but also all through Africa, some parts of the Middle East, where people would say, I relate to what you're saying. I'm here. I feel stuck here. I feel suicidal. My parents, put me through exorcisms all the time. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to run. And it's been really heartbreaking. But I've been able to just, pray with them and encourage them, to do what is safest. Because while I would... Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's interesting that you're saying that you pray with them because you don't want them to give up their religion.
Exactly.
Explain that. And that's part of that is very cultural because that's such an important part of your culture.
It is. It's very difficult for people of, certain cultures, including mine, to have no religious or spiritual aspect. It's ingrained, it's important, it's part of us. And I almost feel like we're being bullied out of it. But it doesn't have to be that way. People can interpret scripture any which way they want to. At the end of the day, God does not live in the Bible. God lives in each and every one of us. And we have a direct line and a direct path to pursue the spirituality that comforts us and makes us a better version of ourselves. If religion is going to help you be better and heal and function, then you should certainly have an avenue to pursue that and not be, told that God hates you and and be casted out from having that. If the LGBT community do not want to pursue religion, I want it to be a choice. I don't want it to be imposed on them by people who have misinterpreted every possible scripture in history.
So I shouldn't criticize Lerone here for being a complete heathen.
No, he can't be a heathen.
Okay.
Thank you, Rizi. Which, by the way, I loved how you framed that. That was beautiful.
When did you come to your current view of God and your current view of religion? Was it in the United States, or did you believe that when you were back in Nigeria too?
Well, as much as my parents and everyone around me tried to pound it, into my head that God was this mean, hateful, judgmental person sitting in the sky, handing out curses and sending diseases when you sin, like AIDS is the cure for homosexuality. That's just God's punishment for the gays.
And that's interesting because in Africa, it's very much a heterosexual disease.
Oh, yes. My two uncles, both of my dad's brothers, passed away from HIV, AIDS-related complications, and they were completely heterosexual. Completely. So that's another thing that comes from a very ignorant, narrow-minded view that we create to fit what we want it to say. But yes, so after hearing all these views, I always did not feel that. Deep in my spirit, I felt that could not be a representation of God. But I could not, I could not prove it. I could not prove that, God was love and not all these things. I just felt it. It was only when I started to research all sorts of faiths. I started to read into the Quran and the Torah and research the Bible some more, and I started to just see things that made no sense and made me realize there was a lot of human influence in all of these books. And then I discovered that, something like the Bible had 40 or more authors and a lot of contradictions in there because of different writers writing the stories, two different creation stories, and just a lot of inconsistencies. And that made me realize that, okay, these are all man-made situations. These are human attempts to understand the spiritual, and in some cases we're going at it very poorly. So I need to explore for myself, God and spirituality. And so that journey began then and continued into Claremont School of Theology, which was a very diverse seminary I attended, and found out after studying beside, people who practice Judaism, Christians, atheists, were also in the school, Jains, people that were Hindu, and I realized one simple thing. No one really knows fully about God, but we're all making attempts, and we're all trying to have a spirituality, and no way is right or wrong. But certainly, since we are also, in this exploration of a higher spirituality, no one should then conclusively judge, criticize, or impose their views on anyone else. Your God and your spirituality, or not to be spiritual, are subjective and personal and should be kept that way. This is why I support separation of church and state as well. All this should be very private between you and your God in your home. It should remain there.
In Nigeria especially, where there's such a divide between the Christian community and the Muslim community, you would think that would be a very big value to people there.
And you're absolutely right. It would be a huge value to people there, and it would probably end all of the wars that we have that are based on religion. There's a huge hatred between the Muslims and the Christians, and every year several hundreds of thousands of people are killed in religious battles. So definitely that's the country where, separation of church, state, mosque, state, and everything else should really be pursued vigilantly. And I hope they will, open their eyes to that someday. It will really help the country.
Right. And in the meantime, gay and lesbian rights are being used to divide people or to marginalize some people, because most people are straight, and we can blame all the bad things on the gay people and on the transgender people. Well, you crazy transgender people, we didn't even know what you are. And and it's being used in such a way to just to marginalize, and there's absolutely no reason. I want to get and we need to take a break, but I want to get, after the break, your view of what you think is going on in this country. Just this week, 2 new states declared that they are marriage equality states. One of them was a complete surprise.
Complete surprise.
And and what's going on with transgender rights that goes along with a lot of that. How much easier you found it here than you did there. I want to know how surprised you were that it was even possible. But we're taking a break. We're speaking to Rizi Xavier Timane. He is the author of An Unspoken Compromise. We'll be back with more Lambda Weekly right after this.
Sparky's Pals reminds you that your pets don't have cell phones, so make sure they can find their way home if they get lost. All pets should wear identifying tags and be microchipped. For more information, their website is www.sparkyspals.org. Their phone number is 214-823-7257.
Okay, and welcome back to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet, and I'm here in the studio with the heathen Lerone Landis, and we're speaking to Rizi Xavier Timane. He is the author of An Unspoken Compromise. Just before the break, we were just about to get into this. This week, 2 states declared themselves marriage equality states. Both happened in the courts. New Mexico was kind of a groundswell for marriage equality. 8 counties already were performing marriages, but the Supreme Court of the state, because in New Mexico what happened was several of the county clerks decided New Mexico law doesn't tell us not to do this, so we think we should. And
it was a very ambiguously written law. And never specified a man and a woman.
And several lower courts ordered their county clerks in several counties that you need to be doing this also. So 8 counties, and then all the county clerks got together and said, this doesn't work, we need a ruling for the whole state. And it was a beautifully written legal decision.
And unanimous, by the way.
Unanimous, but just beautifully written. It's 34 pages, I believe. And, I mean, it was so clear that they said this is based on equal protection under the law. And they said it's just so clear since the Windsor decision in June that so many rights come to couples who are married that it's just inequality not to let people marry, and so marriage is legal all over New Mexico now. But the next day,
shot to everyone, Utah did the same thing. Utah.
But what was so beautiful about that decision was, and it wasn't as clearly a decision. It's not a real clean decision. There's lots that they're thinking they can appeal this on. But it used Justice Scalia's words. And in his court decision 10 years ago in Lawrence v. Texas, it was a really very snotty dissent. But they used those words and turned them against him. And that's part of the reasoning that they're saying we should have this here because Scalia said so. What are you seeing as somebody who didn't grow up in this country, and all of a sudden we have this, you grew up being exorcised for being lesbian, and you're seeing here, state after state after state, Utah, one of the most conservative states in the country, we have marriages going on there this weekend.
As a matter of fact, I saw a poll that said consistently when they poll what states will probably legalize same-sex marriage, Utah always ranks in the bottom 5.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you seeing in this?
Oh, I'm very, very happy about what I'm seeing, first of all. It's phenomenal, and it's the right thing. Finally, the right thing is happening. And I'm surprised about Utah, but positively so. And it's just awesome, because at the end of the day, most of the resistance to gay marriage was coming again from religion, and people not being able to separate, separation of church and state.
Right.
What your religion and your religious beliefs are about marriage are, again, a personal thing. The Constitution of the United States says that all men are created equal. All people are equal before the law. They may not be equal before your God according to your interpretation of your scriptures, but this is not about your God. This is about the law.
Absolutely.
So it's good to see that happening. Courts are standing up now and saying, we have no basis to continue to oppress people because they're different from what you want them to be. These are Americans, they pay taxes, and they have the same rights. And we're starting to see that everywhere, and I really am encouraged to see it. I hope that it somehow spreads to Nigeria and other countries. I don't see it happening immediately, but I have the deepest hope that just as all Western influence somehow makes its way into the African continent, I hope that this also makes its way there, that this influence does come there, maybe 50 years from now or 100 years from now, that people can be free, hopefully sooner, as more people come out of the trenches to speak, about equality.
Now, around the world, there have been some terrible things this year. India last week or 2 weeks ago, there was a terrible court decision that said that they reaffirmed that homosexuality should be illegal. What's going on in Russia is just disgusting. And in several African countries, those American evangelists who went there and stirred up the pot and, just encouraged these anti-gay laws. Do you think some of this backlash and this extremism on the other side in some places where they can get away with it is a result of some places like the European Union and the United States and even some countries in South America legalizing same-sex marriage, and, well, we can't stop it in those places, so we're going to go the far other extreme in the others.
Oh, yes.
Do you think it's going to get worse before it gets better in some places?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I absolutely do. We can see it already getting worse. And it's going to, unfortunately, go just that way before we start to pull ourselves out of the hole that people are digging in 2013. It's ridiculous that laws like that are coming in 2013, but it is a backlash. Some people do not like change, and so they react that way. But it will get better. I absolutely believe that it will.
What can you tell me? What was the response? Well, let me first say, a lot of people in this country, ignorantly so, look at Africa as one big country, and it's obviously we know it's not. But when South Africa became, I think, only the 4th or 5th country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage under their new constitution when Nelson Mandela became president, did that have any effect on other countries in Africa? What did they think about it? What was their response to it?
At the time, it did not have, the effect of making other countries want to follow suit. follow suit and do so too. But at the same time, it did not bring the backlash, as you would think. It kind of was just left alone to be, and it's been like that for years. The backlash really came when these evangelicals brought this gospel of hatred, which is kind of interesting and surprising. But within South Africa itself, though, there was resistance to those laws. There was corrective rape of lesbians going on the outskirts of South Africa, which was just horrible. And homophobia and homophobic crimes continued to rage on. They have one of the highest rates of hate crimes against gays, which is just an oxymoron, given that they have legalized same-sex marriage.
Well,
so there has
not only that, they were the first country to guarantee rights to gays and lesbians in the Constitution. First country in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really troubling to see the two sides of that, though.
And that was one thing, I don't know, did we mention it last week on the show? When Nelson Mandela died, that was a loss to the whole world. That was a terrible loss to the gay and lesbian community because of what he did for us.
Oh, yeah.
First country in the world to put into their constitution, their original constitution, not an amendment, it was just right in there clearly, we have rights. And getting people to follow the law, well, that's a different story.
That's a different story,
But boy, was he is one of the fathers of gay rights, really.
Oh, yeah.
It's a terrible loss.
Well, we're running out of time, but before we go, we have to mention this. Let's switch gears just a little bit. And, you mentioned earlier you support separation of church and state. So let's talk about another law that everyone's hollering about this week, and that is the so-called freedom of speech. We had one of the cast members of Duck Dynasty made some really, really derogatory, stupid, ignorant comments in the GQ article magazine. And
do you know the story we're talking about?
Oh, I do.
Oh, okay,
yes, of course. Who doesn't know?
Well, it's such a stupid story, though.
It is and it isn't. And as
for somebody not to be paying attention to,
I know.
I didn't know who these people were.
Oh, I knew who they were. I know who they were. Yeah. And as a result, A&E, who owns the show, has put this guy on. They suspended him. He hasn't been fired.
Yeah.
The future of the show is now up in the air. But I don't know. What are your thoughts? I mean, what are your thoughts, David? Everyone's hollering about freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. That's not what this is about.
You had the right answer, Lerone, when you said the people defending him aren't defending freedom of speech. What they're defending is the horrible things that he said.
I totally believe that.
Now, nobody stopped him from saying anything. His freedom of speech was not taken away. If I walked into my office and said some of those things, or any of us walked into an office and said those things, we'd be fired.
I'd be fired, especially where I work. If I said that on the job, if I said that in any public forum, like a magazine interview or on the air today, says something like that about a group of people, I wouldn't have been suspended. I would be fired.
But freedom of speech being taken away means that you can't say that. We're arresting you. He wasn't arrested.
He wasn't arrested.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, in Nigeria, how much freedom of speech did you see?
Oh, no. It's sad that we have to laugh about this, but yes, zero. There is no freedom of speech whatsoever.
Like if you said something, say, against the government, what would happen?
What would be the repercussions?
Yeah, what would be the repercussions? How would your freedom of speech, speaking against the government,
you would be
protected?
Killed. You could either be killed immediately, shot on sight, arrested without bail for decades. It happens all the time. So, I mean, before people talk about their freedom of speech being violated, they need to see what a violation looks like.
Thank
of
you.
Freedom of speech.
Love that. I love that.
I think some of these people don't understand what freedom of speech.
They don't.
Freedom of speech also means, though, in this country, it means that if you say something, there are repercussions.
Well,
exactly.
They're missing a key point, and that is, yes, freedom of speech, but there's also freedom to fire. I mean, exactly. Companies have a right to let you go. There's no law that says that they have to keep you.
Right.
Exactly. If your views are not in line with theirs, they can fire you.
They can fire you.
And it's not just
to be homophobic.
It's not just not in line with theirs. I think it's a matter of you're embarrassing our company. You're not a good representative of us. We don't want you on the air with us.
Exactly.
But you know what? I do blame A&E partially also. This was a multi-million-dollar franchise.
It is.
It was. I mean, this guy alone has made more money in the last year than you and I will make in a lifetime.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, the amount of merchandise that they sell. I never heard of this show before. I can't believe I never heard of this show before.
The only way I heard of it is because where I used to work, there were some fans of the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
But where I blame the network is there should have been some kind of a publicist, a handler, or something. You know, he's not mainstream Hollywood either, and he might not be the brightest guy. Maybe he is. I don't really know. I mean, I don't. But I would think A&E would have somebody working with him on, hey, by the way, I'm not asking you to support anything you don't support, but there are several places where you might not want to open your mouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
because you represent us.
Part
exactly.
Part of the arguments, though, again, the people who are so-called defending him, it's like, well, you know, don't ask a question we don't want to hear the answer. Well, if you read the entire interview, he was never asked about homosexuality.
Right.
He brought that up completely 100% on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also that black people were better off during the Jim Crow laws.
Exactly.
Oh, that was
that was horrible too. It's like,
okay, so Lerone, your family was here during Jim Crow laws. How good did your family have it?
Probably not too good. It's not probably. I know they didn't have it too good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondering.
It's horrible.
Yeah. It's just dumb.
Yeah,
But you know that's okay. We have freedom of speech. He can say what he wants to say.
He can. And you know, it was actually kind of a bad day if you're on social network, if you're battling these other opinions. And for me, I thought it really brought out some of the biggest out of the woodwork. Mm-hmm. It really did.
Yeah.
You know, it's like some people I was really surprised to see defending this guy. I'm like, you out of all people. Mm-hmm. So it's been a very interesting week with 2 states legalizing same-sex marriage, and then this Duck Dynasty stuff. Mm-hmm. Very interesting week.
But the most interesting thing I thought about that was Cracker Barrel, which has a history of being of just firing their gay employees. Now they changed that policy a number of years ago, and they actually rate fairly well on the HRC's Corporate Equality Index. But they were the first company. I mean, they probably are the biggest marketer of their stuff. They pulled all their merchandise off of the show.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
You know, it was.
Pleasant surprise.
It's one of those things that I would kind of expect them to just kind of quietly do, not make a big announcement. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, and again, it's the freedom of speech. I don't have to make the announcement.
Right.
Exactly.
It might not be good. It might not attract our typical customers. So.
Right.
Anyway, we are talking, and we have just a couple more minutes with Rizi Xavier Timane. His new book is An Unspoken Compromise. It's about his growing up in Nigeria, coming out as a lesbian at age 8, and then coming to this country and transitioning to transgender. If you have something to say to other people who've been in, I don't know how our listeners might be in a similar position, but if you have something to say to other transgender people, just a few words of encouragement. Tell me what they are.
Well, the first thing to know is you are not alone in this, and there are a lot of resources out there now, a lot of people you can talk to. Do not be afraid to reach out. You can reach out to Rizi Timane Ministries. I can help you out.
What is the website?
It's rizigospel.org.
And that's Rizi, R-I-Z-I, gospel, Gospel.org. Okay.
.org. You can, email me personally. I will speak with you, and I will be happy to refer you to, all sorts of resources, doctors, therapists, support groups, spiritual ones or secular ones to help you out. You are not alone. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the way that you feel or who you are. And if you want to pursue a spiritual path, one does exist for you. Do not be discouraged by the religious haters and other haters out there. Everything will be okay.
Not everybody can do this, but if you can, do you encourage people to move to a larger city where there are those resources? Like here in Dallas, we have the largest GLBT church in the world. Where there are other resources, out in Los Angeles, lots of resources for transgender people. But would you encourage somebody to do that because it would be difficult to transition in a small town?
If it is possible to move, yes, please do move. And if it's not, at least get some kind of online or phone support in the meantime to help you emotionally through it.
Yeah, very good. Rizi, I want to thank you for being with us.
Thank you
so
so
much, David. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Lerone.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed talking to you both.
Delightful hour.
Thank you very
We'll talk
much.
again. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Have a great week.
You too.
Bye-bye.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.